So it's not all that often within the MMO genre that we actually see new MMOs, like ever. It's so rare these days that every single time it happens, it's a pretty big deal. And today I actually have one of these new MMOs to show you. This is Warborne Above Ashes, a new free-to-play MMO and honestly, a new type of MMO altogether. Sure, MMOs in the past have included PvP and it's even been a main focus of some MMOs, but not quite like Warborne. This is essentially a multi-faction based MOBA-inspired PvPvE power struggle that resets every 30 days. They've been gracious enough to sponsor today's video, and alongside me and many others, you'll be able to hop into the game when it releases on September 19th through Steam or the Epic Game Store. So what is Warborne Above Ashes? Well, it's developed by Kuland Games, and this is a free-to-play sci-fi MMO that blends territorial warfare with tons of build customization and crafting, and this is all with a very heavy focus on fast-paced, partial loot PvP, which I'll explain what partial loot means a bit later on. There's no long quest chains or endless amounts of leveling that's required to actually get you to the end game or the PvP content. You pretty much just choose a faction right upon entering the game, and this immediately gives you a huge amount of teammates and people to work with and play with. Apparently, Warborne supports up to 200 players battling lag-free on the same map, and the recent playtest they had earlier in August seemed to support this. Players from that playtest actually called it a surprise hit that popped out of nowhere. And one important thing to note is that this recent playtest was actually completely free to play, and they didn't have some sort of Kickstarter campaign or anything like that, and in my opinion, that alone deserves some praise, especially in our modern beta testing hellscape that we see the MMO genre sort of entering. But I mean, even just taking a look at the Reddit, it seems like most people were pretty surprised with the quality of gameplay, some of them saying they didn't have high expectations and that Warborne was a ton of fun, they can't wait to play more. When you start Warborne, you're going to be asked to choose between one of the 6 factions. Each of these factions have their own benefits, from increased mount speed to reduce cooldown times, and depending on your playstyle, this might dictate your choice. Each faction starts in a different area of the map, and you'll be open to taking on the other 5 factions in order to gain control of more and more territories. Ultimately, the goal is to push towards the center of the map, but once you join one of these factions, you're going to then want to join a warband, which is essentially a guild. You can definitely play this game solo, but as a PvP-focused MMO, basically everything that you're going to want to do is going to be a lot easier and a lot more fun if you have friends or a group to do it with. Now, the character system in Warborne is actually pretty cool. You can essentially control multiple classes or multiple characters, or drifters as they're called, and switch between these as you please. Each of these drifters will have their own gear, their own abilities, own stats, etc., and you can switch between these characters even when you die, essentially giving you multiple lives. Now, some of these drifters are more tank-focused or healer-focused, and you could use a combination of these yourself. You are limited in how many drifters you can control. I believe it's up to 3 at the moment, but this is a really unique take on PvP that I don't think I've ever really seen implemented before. Having 3 fully geared and leveled drifters under your command, maybe your first drifter wasn't the right counter to your opponent's first drifter, but then your second drifter was the correct counter for your opponent's next 2. This obviously adds a ton of depth and strategy to how you actually engage with your enemies, and honestly, I'm pretty excited to jump into it myself. I'll probably be completely awful, but hey, you can't get better at something without at first kind of sucking at it. Now, speaking of gearing, it's a fairly simple system. It involves equipping weapons and armor that have stats and passives, which can then be further customized with mods and research. It's important to note that when one of your drifters dies, there will be some consequences, depending on the danger level of the zone that you're currently in. A good rule of thumb to go by is that your drifter will generally lose half their inventory as well as one of their equipped items. These can be picked up by whoever killed you, or rather your loot will be placed directly in their inventory. Now, Warborne is not actually full loot PvP at any point in time across the entire game. But generally, the closer you get to the center of the map, the higher the danger level increases and the more loot you're risking. Another important factor to consider is that across all of the map, you're going to run into high danger environmental zones, which can dictate how you actually play within a zone. Everything from magma rivers to toxic ash clouds, which might require you to wear certain types of gear with high resistances to those effects. Now, what really ends up keeping this game feeling fresh is its seasonal content system. Basically, you're going to level up your base and your drifters, and you're going to take over as much of the map as you possibly can alongside your faction and your warband, but after 30 days, the map will be wiped. There are some persistent rewards that transgress the 30-day season in order to reward longer-term players, but the vast majority of progress will be reset. Now, you might be thinking initially, like I did, that you might want to wait for a new season to actually hop into the game. But luckily, it seems like the devs have actually thought of this. Basically, every week within a season, you'll actually see new updates and catch-up mechanics that are implemented to that season in order to catch up anybody that might be a late starter to that season. And on top of all of that, another part of Warborne's progression is your drift mark. This is essentially your base of operations. It's your primary location for construction and crafting, and it's where you can build various stations for other progression. You can basically move around your drift mark. You can place it in locations that are more beneficial to you because they're closer to resource deposits, allowing you to adapt to whatever gear or crafting you might be working on. On top of that, if you do join a warband, the Driftmark can actually act as a central hub, which grants experience boosts and buffs to your guild members as long as they're in the vicinity of your Driftmark. And furthermore, it can be a part of a fast travel network, and you can even connect it to your warband's fast travel network, and then you can all teleport together between each other's Driftmarks. While the game is definitely highly focused on PvP, there are plenty of things to work on outside of PvP that are pretty essential to your progression. Obviously, building up your Driftmark and leveling up your characters, which can be done by venturing out into the world and looting certain PvE-focused areas. You can even do this in a group, but it is important to note that any experience gained while you're in a group will be split up between you and your group members. But on top of that, gathering and crafting makes up a huge portion of the gear progression within Warborne. There are even classes or drifters that you can use whose primary focus is gathering. And there's equipment you can obtain and use which will make you more efficient at gathering as well. The entire map is basically made up of these zones which have harvester systems, and when it comes time for you and your warband and your faction to raid one of these zones, you'll have to actually take over the harvester, and you'll have to defeat a ton of mobs, and you have to drop certain items on the harvester to destroy it. If it's the first time the harvester has been captured in a season, the warband who participated the most will actually receive rewards once it's taken over. And then obviously you're going to need to defend the thing as well as bring something known as orbs to the harvester in order to level it up. Once the harvester hits level 3, you and your warband can then attack the surrounding and adjacent harvesters in zones beside you. Now, one of the reasons I'm most excited to try this game is because dying isn't really all that risky. Sure, you do lose some items, and there has to at least be some consequences for death in order to apply a level of risk and gravitas to the actions that you take within the game, especially within PvP, but it seems like it's really easy to just get back up and hop right back into the battle. One of the main issues that I've personally had with PvP games in the past is that you spend altogether way too much time preparing for PvP. And then you go in PvP and you're kind of bad like me and you die in 20 minutes, and then you have to spend all that time preparing all over again. This has been a consistent balancing issue that PvP games have attempted to fix time and time again over the years, and it seems like Warborne has really struck a nice balance between downtime and PvP and being able to hop back into the battle relatively quickly. Honestly, with all of the different roles between the 40 available drifters to play within Warborne, it seems like each of those characters has its own unique way of contributing to a battle or influencing a battle. Some are better at tanking or healing, like I mentioned before, but others are better at sneaking or providing support to the rest of the team, and some drifters are even just all around better for solo gameplay. This really allows for someone who might be new to Zerging or 100 vs 100 types of PvP gameplay to find a niche and a role to fill that might be easier to take part in. This will allow them to learn the ebbs and flows of large-scale PvP gameplay so they can eventually start performing and filling more important roles later on. We as MMO players constantly talk about the need for a more social experience, and in 2025 that can be hard to find as we're all segregated in different Discord servers and communities within a game. But when something like Warborne comes around, it really forces you to interact and open up when such an essential part of the gameplay is clear and effective communication between a massive group of players. It really brings back that old school social vibe in a way that a PvE only MMO just really can't compete with. Now, one important thing to note is that Warborne currently has a pre-launch event known as the Elite Breach, and here you can pre-register for the game's release on September 19th. You can choose which faction you want to be, and you can even join some warbands that are pre-registered and already planning their day one activities. On top of that, by joining up and inviting friends, you can win all kinds of in-game rewards and cosmetics like new avatars, emotes, and titles. All in all, it's nice to see new MMOs entering the space, especially when they have some unique ideas or new takes on something that's already been tried. I'm extremely excited for Warborne. I will absolutely be playing the heck out of this game on September 19th, and if you would like to join me, make sure to use my link in the top of the description or in the pinned comment to get registered and join a warband early. Once again, a massive thank you to Warborne for sponsoring today's video, and don't forget a like, a comment, a sub. Those things help a bunch. Anyway, I will catch you all in the next one. Later.